Hey guys, and welcome to my very first video on Bobby's World of Tech. I was thinking about what kind of video I could make. What better way to probably do that than to have some upcoming projects and just film one of those. I find myself doing a few projects here and there, not so often, but often enough. And so many times I've done things and perhaps tried to tell other people about it, but I don't know if it's been quite as comprehensive as what it could be. So I'm hoping that with these videos on this channel, I'll have projects either that I'm doing at home or at work, and they will help others with projects either that they have or things that they want to accomplish or do. And if what I'm doing can be a help and a blessing and help someone else accomplish what they're doing, then I figured why not just put that up and allow them to see that. So either way, whatever it may be, I'm hoping that this will be something you like. So I hope that you'll subscribe and like videos that you like. And I don't know, my content's not going to be super professional by any means, but I'm hoping to make it clear enough and precise enough. And hopefully I'll be able to answer any questions if people have them. And so I'm not going to be doing this only. I do have other responsibilities and a job, but I'm hoping that it'll be something of a benefit to someone in some form or fashion. And so today, with the first project I have ongoing, I'm going to be cleaning and updating and just straightening up this live streaming PC. This is the computer. We use this for live streaming in our church, and so we built this computer a few years ago now with a budget in mind, an extreme budget actually, and most people that probably are building a live streaming PC would probably not spend as little as we did, but we didn't run anything too fancy. We just wanted something that worked, and we wanted to be able to send video, one stream of video really, to the server and people to watch the services live or any other major events. And so we've been doing that now for a little while, and the main reason for doing this whole, really an upgrade part of it, the cleaning could be done anyways, but we are dropping frames, and the frames are about 3,000 frames per hour, which relatively speaking isn't awful when you're doing 30 frames a second. However, it can make the viewers, experience a little unpleasant. So we want to try to address this since it's been a few years now, and we've gotten by it with so little for so long. I think total this system cost about $400 and maybe $50 with Windows 7 64-bit included. So I had some parts that were used from previous builds and some other things that I was able to donate and give to them and use for the build. So we really only spent so much money on so many of the other components. So what we're going to do today is, one, we're going to clean the system because as you can see it is quite dirty. We have some dust that is not the color of the fans, that is dust in the front, just kind of caked up on that front air filter mesh, which is good that it's prevented it from coming into the case, but even still, air has, or not air, air gets in the case, of course. Dust has gathered in the case pretty bad, and it's in a place, and for some reason the sound booth collects dust so bad, I'm not sure why, but anyways, we're going to be cleaning and, like I said, upgrading the system slightly, and I'll talk about that here in a second, as well as straightening up some things. To start with the straightening up, what I mean by that is we won't really care so much about the looks of this case. It's nice that it doesn't look like a piece of junk sitting where it does, but we don't want it to look, super fancy either. It's just to house the computer. That's for the live streaming. However, there's one thing that really does bug me, and we're going to address that while we're doing this stuff, is that this CD drive was at one time up in the top here, which is where I would prefer it to be, and some probably have noticed that it's in the bottom. So you wonder why. Bobby, why is it in the bottom? Well, every time I would walk up to this computer or in this area and I would look down, this gray CD-ROM would be at the very top, and so you can see this gray box sticking out about this much. And you can see it down through the mesh, and it looks just terrible. So one of the things we're going to do is I bought some black spray paint, and we are going to just spray paint, if not the back or the whole thing, and just kind of make it look a little bit more subtle in there so it's not so obvious. So besides cleaning, we're going to do that one particular modification. Other than that, though, the system itself will be fine. As far as the upgrades go, I'll run through first what the system has and then what we'll be changing. We This, of course, is based with an AMD FX 6300 CPU, 6-core, and it is very powerful for what we're doing. Again, we were building it with a budget in mind, and it's an excellent price for performance ratio buy. Still is. I think it's for like $99 right now on Newegg. So works really, really great, and we didn't really need anything more. However, with the motherboard that we're using, which is a Gigabyte Z8L MT-S2, it's like a $45 motherboard and super inexpensive and no frills, nothing special. Did what we needed to do, and it really can't take anything more than a 95-watt CPU. So there is one AMD 8-core 95-watt CPU, I believe now. I think it's an 8300, but I think in our interest it would be better upgrading the motherboard rather than the CPU in this case. And also another reason is because the motherboard only supports DDR3 1333 memory, which is really not that fast considering that the AMD chip does support natively 1866 speeds. So we did invest in a 1333 kit, which have pretty nice tight timings of 77721. However, I think we're going to benefit more from a newer motherboard and keeping the memory that we have. I may try to overclock the memory to 1600 megahertz, which would give a pretty good performance boost for transcoding. And overall, a little bit of why we chose the motherboard. I think having just a better base to work with, for which the CPU to work in with more features. Hopefully we'll be able to overclock and push that CPU a little bit, give us a little bit more money for more performance for our dollar, I should say. The rest of the components in the system, this is an ATI HD 2600, I believe. So it's nothing special. Only reason why it's in this system is because we needed a video card with a dedicated 512 megs of memory or more, I think. And also we have, I don't know if you can see under there, is an AverMedia HD capture card. Now, most capture cards are not designed necessarily to work with just inputting and streaming necessarily, but a lot of them you find are compatible. And so when we plugged it in, we saw Adobe Media Encoder recognized it right away as an input, and it worked just fine. However, to note, this one does not support 1080p. One is an out, one is an in. Or excuse me, one is an in for HDMI itself, and one is an adapter that separates to component or composite, which we have, but we have not really used. This is only a 1080i capture card, so it's not full 1080p. However, our live streams are really only to 720p, so we don't even do 1080 full res 1080p for our live streaming. Anyways, so it works really, really well. I think it's like a $90 capture card, one of the things that we invested in. You can see the power supply here. It's a little older, but it's been a great power supply. I used it in a couple other builds that I had, and I had it laying around. I was able to donate and use it. A little more power than what we need for this system, but it works fantastic. It is an older power supply, so it's not modular, and it's really messy kind of down there. I might try to straighten that up a little bit, but really with the side panel on, you can't really notice it too much. But other than that, the only other component, other than, there is an SSD. We do use just the 128 gigabyte, I think it's a Toshiba SSD. We don't really archive anything on this system, so we don't really have any need to have massive storage. It pretty much just transcodes and sends to the server. And then lastly, we have the case, which is a fantastic case. This is by Corsair. It's the 300R. I've used this in a few different builds for different people, and it offers great airflow, great fan support for radiators and such. But for this, we really didn't need anything too snazzy. We just needed something that had decent breathing capability if we wanted it, and so we chose the 300R as a very decent, usable case for hopefully years to come. And so with the combined parts that I used that were used already, and plus some new components, this was our live streaming build. So for the major thing we'll be doing with this system, it will be the motherboard upgrade. So this is the motherboard that we will be inputting into the live streaming build to replace the old Gigabyte 760 chipset motherboard. This is a big upgrade for what we had in the system before. Now this is a 990FX gaming motherboard. A couple things to note. Obviously the 990FX chipset really supports the Crossfire and SLI capabilities, which we will not be using, and some people might say that's just too much for what we're using it for, and I really agree with you there. However, the price this motherboard is and some of the features that it has, other than the SLI and Crossfire support, it's going to be a great choice, I think, that will last hopefully for several years. And it is a gaming motherboard, which means there are some features that aim towards people who are gamers, but you probably won't be using those features as much. This is a well-received and rated motherboard. I think it was around $120 when it was purchased. And this is something interesting that Gigabyte did with this motherboard. They released it a little late in the game, being as AM3 Plus is now 3 to 4 years old. And so probably several manufacturers not really thinking it might be well worth investing in making a new motherboard. Gigabyte decided they would release one more, I guess, of the platform of AM3 Plus. And so they decided they would add some of these newer technologies that Intel was getting on their motherboards that AM3 Plus does not have. So very simply put, they added some features, which I'll show you here in a second, that are really key reasons why we chose this motherboard in particular, and so hopefully they'll last with newer technologies coming up. So we have a couple new things here. The USB 3C connector back here for people that might have those types of flash drives or other devices that use those. That's on there. It does also have USB 3.1 support, which is an improved protocol of USB 3.0, which runs at 10 gigabits per second instead of 5. So that's a major improvement. And it also has a killer NIC, which I'm not sure if it will really help performance in terms of handling internet traffic when we're live streaming. However, I know it's intended for gaming and handling that kind of information. However, it's a really reliable Ethernet, and from what I understand and what I hear. Although the motherboard does have some great onboard audio, in fact, probably some of the best I've seen in quite a while. It's amazing how far onboard audio has really come in the last several years. I remember my first Intel motherboard, I think it was an 865 chipset, had, just your typical sounding audio with noise in the background. And of course, they've improved it so much now. Motherboard manufacturers really getting on their game about audio. So that's pretty nice. Although at this point in time, we're not really using the audio too much on this board. The board does have a great heatsink and heat pipe, heat dissipation area, and fantastic for cooling the VRMs. It is an 8+2 power phase, so it should offer very good reliability and power delivery for the CPU. Pretty much everything else on the board is anything you would expect on a gaming type motherboard, and special for like overclocking and such. It does have some power and reset buttons built onto the motherboard, which is nice, and a debug LED light here. And so typical features, it does support full SATA 6 gigabits per second and RAID if we were to use that. Oh, probably the last feature I will mention that it does also support that are not popular on a lot of AMD motherboards. This supports an M.2 drive of pretty much any size, and it does support it at 20 gigabits per second. And I think even my Intel motherboard only supports a 10 gigabit per second M.2. However, it does share, I believe, with other PCI Express lanes, so if you use that, it will block or hinder those from being used. But since we're not really using other PCI Express lanes except for probably perhaps the PCI Express 1, PCI Express 16 slot, that'll be no problem for us. And this is the component we will be using for cooling our FX 6300 CPU. This Hyper 212 Evo is a fantastic budget cooler. I think they've even released a newer version of this that you can get even up to 2 fans included in the box. It's a Hyper 212 something. I can't remember the name of it right now. But this is a fantastic cooler for the price. I think it costs like $35. I bought it for a other build that we've since not had together, so it's been sitting collecting some dust for the last couple months. So I thought, what not a better way to use this than to simply put it in this computer and try to get everything we can out of that FX 6300 chip. So we are going to put this on the CPU, and it should cool quite well and keep our temperatures and also keep the system quiet. All right, and now the build. For best results, avoid direct sunlight, high humidity, or breezy conditions. is, the live streaming build is finished. The rebuild, cleanup, fix, repair, improvise, improve live streaming PC. Considering all things, I think it went very well. The system is noticeably quieter, and with the larger motherboard it was a little easier to hide certain cables, make things look a little bit more neat. The plasti dip covering the optical drive was definitely a fantastic idea. Definitely helps when you're looking over the system and look down inside of that mesh. It hides that aluminum look very easily, because that's normally the first thing your eyes and attention was drawn to. Ketchup and mustard cables are not really desired, of course, but again, we were going for functionality, not necessarily for looks, and for that reason everything is serving its purpose as intended. So overall, I'm very pleased with how everything turned out. The processor was very successful in overclocking to 4.6 gigahertz. Of course, that's kind of an expected frequency to be able to get to with an FX 6300. And temperatures are extremely cold, I think maxing out at like 38 degrees Celsius, which is completely fine. Well below the needed average for temperatures on this chip. We actually set this up and did a live streaming test, and with successful, no frame rate drops whatsoever, we were able to live stream, and it was quite successful. On top of all that, we were able to successfully overclock the memory from 1333 to 1600 megahertz with a 99924 timing, and which G.Skill offers the exact same memory kit with those timings and at 1.5 volts as a 1600 speed memory kit on Newegg. We just simply took the 1333 kit at 77721 and just changed it to those other specs at 1.5 volts, completely successful. That's pretty cool that you have that kind of flexibility. Some might say you could take that a little higher. We could, but it's serving our purpose, and with having no drop frames and with the CPU going from 3.5 to 4.6 gigahertz with no problems whatsoever. Ran a stress test for several hours and live streamed flawlessly. So very happy with how everything turned out, and I hope to have some more videos like this, of this kind of nature, and I have some more projects that are coming up. I'm not sure how quickly I'll be able to upload those and get those to everyone, but hopefully, if you like this video, go ahead and throw a like, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and I hope to have some more videos for everyone, and I will see everyone else in another video at some time.